Hello and welcome to Did You Know Gaming Extra. In this episode, we'll be peeking into the domain that made gaming popular in the first place, the arcade. Before home consoles became affordable for average consumers, the hallowed halls of the arcade were where gamers spent their hard-earned cash. Or their parents' hard-earned cash, more likely.
That's like a baby's toy.
The first two coin-operated video game arcade machines were developed in the same year, and were even adaptations of the same game. Released in 1971, Computer Space and Galaxy Game were both based on the title Space War, which released in 1962. The prototype for Galaxy Game was created by Bill Pitts and Hugh Tuck, and was put on display at Stanford University in November that year. The game had two player-controlled ships called the Needle and the Wedge, which tried to shoot each other while navigating around a gravity well. The game was a technical success, but fared poorly financially, as it only cost 25 cents to play. That said, the duo never had any intention of making profit from their creation, only hoping to push the boundaries of gaming. Only a few months earlier, in August, Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney released their own prototype of Computer Space in a bar near Stanford. In contrast to Galaxy Game, Bushnell and Dabney opted for a more financially economic route, even designing their own hardware to keep costs down. This came with a caveat, as the decrease in power produced by the dedicated hardware meant not only getting rid of the gravity well in the middle, but also dropping the second player. The game's goal was changed to destroying multiple alien craft with one player-controlled ship in open space. Over the next several years, the game became a financial success, making over $1 million. Bushnell and Dabney, meanwhile, went on to form Atari Inc. a year later. Speaking of which, one of the features that made Atari's light gun shooter Area 51 so popular was the numerous Easter eggs within it, such as the Cron Hunter mode secret. To achieve Cron Hunter mode, the player must ignore the immediate alien threat and instead shoot the first 3 star soldiers that arrive. This will trigger a brief screen transition and a short story, before changing the visuals to resemble that of a Predator's vision from the 1987 movie of the same name. The icons on the HUD also change to fit the new theme, and although the gameplay stays the same, if the player completes the game with a high score, they get a letter K next to their name in the score rankings. With the arcade version of Golden Axe, the sound effects also took some inspiration from 1980s action films. Some of the death cries are simply digitized versions of screams from Conan the Barbarian and Rambo's debut film, First Blood. These include the scream of an impaled warrior from Conan, which is used when the Bad Brothers are killed, as well as General Heartland. Also from Conan is the Priest's Scream, which can be heard when the player kills enemy skeletons. Clips from First Blood include Sergeant Galt's scream for the male villagers, and the scream from Mitch that sounds like, which can be heard from most other male enemies. The team continued this trend with the Golden Axe sequel, The Revenge of Death Adder, which featured the voice of Grace Jones's character Zula from Conan the Destroyer as the first boss. Some companies take more than just inspiration from other IPs. In 1991, the company Philip Morris, owners of Marlboro cigarettes, sued SEGA over the use of a near-exact copy of their logo in the 1989 arcade game Super Monaco GP. Complaints had been made against SEGA over the use of Marlboro throughout the game. David Rosen of SEGA responded by saying it was, quote, simply a game designer's innocent attempt to mimic real-life locations. There is absolutely no form of paid or intentional advertising displayed in any of SEGA's arcade or consumer video games. Media relations manager for Philip Morris in New York, Stephen Weiss, agreed with the statement, as SEGA hadn't even asked for permission to use their logo. Weiss told the Associated Press in 1990 that Philip Morris had contacted SEGA the previous year with their concerns and formally requested the games to be recalled. SEGA agreed to this and even signed a document confirming their efforts to do so. However, 1 year later, Philip Morris were not satisfied with SEGA's efforts and filed a trademark infringement lawsuit in February of that year. They initially demanded that all labels, signs, prints, packages, wrappers, receptacles, and advertisements bearing the Morris logo get turned over by SEGA for destruction. They also asked to recall all copies of Super Monaco GP that likewise had their logo on it. The legal battle finally came to a head in May 1992. The final settlement required SEGA to run 3 months of full-page coloured ads in magazines Playmaster and Replay, offering owners of Super Monaco GP full conversion kits including decals, computer chips, and instructions for conversion, as well as a $200 payment upon completion and return of the original chips. Representatives from Philip Morris were pleased with the settlement, reiterating the importance of the Marlboro brand no longer being so easily accessible to children. Remaining on the topic of SEGA, Yu Suzuki, creator of Shenmue, installed a secret button under his desk during the development of Space Harrier that would wipe the color RAM of the game. He would use this button whenever then president of SEGA, Hayao Nakayama, would visit their office, in order to make the game seem further behind in production than it really was. This was because Suzuki feared that Nakayama would see how far they'd come with the graphics and claimed that the game was ready for release. Funnily enough, it was during one of these graphical glitches that Suzuki discovered a color palette that he found striking, which ended up in the finished game. This wouldn't be the last time a bug influenced the final product, as even the sound of bullets bouncing off of surfaces was drawn from a glitch involving object collision. In the original arcade release for Tekken 3, Namco programmed in a time release mechanism that would prevent players from unlocking more characters until a specific amount of real-world time had elapsed. After a certain amount of time has passed, a screen transition will appear with the words "Who is it?" with the silhouette of a new character. This would remain in place for several days before it was replaced by a "Coming Soon" screen with the character's name on it, as well as a picture of the character. This means that the character is now unlocked. However, to actually play against them, another set of conditions must be met. For example, Kuma, who appears after 28 days, will simply be fought on stage 4. To fight Gunjack, the player must wait 69 days and then get to stage 3 in 50 seconds, or stage 4 in 1 minute and 10 seconds. Then Gunjack will appear on the next stage. The last character to be time released is Tiger Jackson after 129 days. Unfortunately, there's no footage anywhere of this, but it's true. I guess no one wanted to wait 129 days and film it. The year after the release of Tekken 3 in arcades, Namco published a game developed by Dream Factory called Ehrgeiz: God Bless the Ring. Also a 3D fighting game, but with a greater emphasis on wrestling and drawing influence from Dream Factory's Tobal series, Ehrgeiz also appeared to have a time release system in place. After 30 days, Cloud Strife would be playable, followed by Tifa Lockhart at 60 days. Both featured in Squaresoft's Final Fantasy VII. What could be a reference to another FF7 character comes in the form of Django, a grey wolf-like fighter who becomes available after 90 days. Despite being a new appearance, Django's alternate costume of red fur bears a striking resemblance to the character Red 13. Not only this, but the names of his moves, Seto Punch, Nanaki Combination, and Bahamut Kick, to name a few, reference characters, summons, and enemies from the PlayStation Classic. There are also similarities between the main characters of Ehrgeiz and those of the Tekken universe. Ken Godhand Mishima resembles Kazuya Mishima, as well as sharing their surname. Han Daehan is similar to Hwoarang, and Li Xuan mirrors Lei Hulong. This isn't too surprising when you realize director of Ehrgeiz, Sei Chi-ishi, had previously directed both Tekken 1 and Tekken 2, and that the characters were designed by Tetsuya Nomura, who was chief character designer on Final Fantasy VII. Ehrgeiz's PS1 release would include more characters from the Final Fantasy universe, as Square took over the publishing duties and presumably granted more IP rights to Dream Factory. We'd be remiss in our work if we didn't take this opportunity to talk about one of Nintendo's early arcade titles, such as the original Mario Bros. Game. The arcade version of the game has unused data that indicates that the game may have been somewhat different in its earlier builds. There is unused art for an enemy Snake and several unused poses for Mario and Luigi. This includes an alternate squashed pose, a sleep or falling over pose, and what seems to be unused poses of the Mario brothers riding something. What's also interesting about this is that, according to Nintendo, plans were in place for Mario to ride a dinosaur creature in Super Mario Bros. However, this statement has never been made about the original Mario Bros. And now it's time for this episode's random piece of trivia, and today we'll be talking about Bethesda. In June 2018, Bethesda Softworks filed a lawsuit against Behavior Interactive and Warner Bros. Entertainment over the mobile title Westworld. Bethesda claimed that Westworld was a rip-off of its own game Fallout Shelter, released in 2015. Not only this, but both games were developed by Behavior Interactive, with Bethesda claiming that copyrighted code had been reused, and a bug which was present in earlier versions of Fallout Shelter could also be found in Westworld. On December 12, 2018, a notice had been filed in federal court that both sides had reached an amicable resolution and would bear their own attorneys' fees and costs. On January 15th, Westworld was removed from all app stores, and with its in-app purchases being deactivated soon after. Interestingly, Behavior Interactive stated on January 25th that Westworld's removal from the App Store and Google Play was entirely unrelated to their suit with Bethesda, and that the timing was coincidental. That's all for today. I've got an interesting thing I want to try. Don't forget to like, and don't forget to subscribe. I think if people said this all the time, people would just love it. And, follow us on Facebook. Why not? People use Facebook, don't they? Huh? I do. And I'm really cool. I completed Metal Gear Solid on European Extreme once. So, think about that. When you're thinking about, who's the cool guy? This guy, right? European Extreme, because I'm f***ing European, technically, and I'm extreme.